My cat's
House.
word today though, so.
Gene is out.
Okay.
Okay, we are on.
So welcome to Adventure, our media availability today, our media briefing, and public access. Those who are watching us over the internet, we invite you to text in your question or through social media. And we'll go ahead and start with questions from those here, from our media representatives.
President, House Bill 11, which would bring back the firing squad as an option for the death penalty, just passed the House. There was a call of the House, there was a locked vote, and it ended up in a 5-vote victory. It is now coming over to the Senate. What is your take on the debate as it will play out in the Senate?
Well, I think it's a little early to predict what that is because we didn't know whether it would pass the Senate or not. So now we'll get serious about the bill, have some caucus meetings about it, and see what the will of the Senate is.
Do you think it will potentially come down to the wire like it did in the House, in the Senate?
Yeah, it's a legislative session. Anything's possible, I think, and it's just hard to predict at this point what would happen to that bill.
What are your thoughts personally on it?
Really haven't thought too much about it. It's really hard for me to say at this point because we've been working on issues like transportation funding and Medicaid expansion, and so it's just not something that I've really spent much time on.
My understanding is not a primary, or it's just if
Right, it would be a secondary option if the lethal injection were not available.
I don't think we had a real chance to look at it yet, but we'll get an opinion.
The Democratic caucus, we were hoping the House would kill it and we could dodge a bullet, but we'll see how it goes over here. And I mean, the only amendment that I would add on is I'm against the death penalty generally, and I don't like this. But if we do it, let's stream it live. I mean, if the purpose of it is for deterrence, and we're willing to live with the death penalty, then maybe we ought to get it out there. it just seems a bit barbaric these days, but we're going to have to deal with it now, and we'll see where it goes.
Let's call that the Baucus Amendment.
You missed the dodge a bullet, but I'll let it go.
Who's the Senate sponsor? I looked at the bill, it didn't have a Senate sponsor.
Yeah, I'm not
We didn't know.
sure.
No.
What if nobody sponsors it?
One of the issues that came up today was the question
Debt.
of whether the bill, whether bringing back the firing squad would be barbaric, and how that would contribute to Utah's image. Do you want to comment on that in the context of this legislation?
Is there, when you have the death penalty, I guess there's many different ways that the penalty could be applied, but all of them result in somebody's death, and so I think any of those treatments have to be carefully scrutinized to make sure that it's done in the most humane way. So
I think you could argue outside of that question about the image, what it means. I don't think you could really tell.
And right now, we're pushing some other issues, which I think I'd hope highlight the session, and that'd be, Eric Hutchings has a bill, I hope it gets as much attention, about sentencing revisions and recidivism, and trying to keep people from ever getting there.
Given all the other issues you have this session to deal with, big issues, is this something you need to handle this session, an alternative death penalty, or is this something you might want to, as a body, study further or delay action on until another session when maybe you have more time? Because none of you seem to really have taken attention to this bill, given everything
Sure.
else.
Let me
Sorry,
respond to
Heather.
that, because one of the standard questions I asked a judge, a district court judge, or now a justice, Supreme Court justice, is their feeling about the death penalty. And it's almost unanimously, they say they follow the law. And although they don't really relish that opportunity, that if that's the decision, they would sign the death warrant. It was when we asked Judge Hermonis that, he raised the issue about the legality right now of death penalties because of the cloud on the way it's taken. So I think it's a very important issue. We have men, and I don't know women, we have people, I should say, on death row here in Utah now. Mendes, who was convicted in '85, I think, had a choice between the firing squad and injection. He took the firing squad. That was his choice. The law and the case in 1985 allowed one convicted of a crime in that choice. So I think until we clear up the issue about whether injection will work, I think there's a cloud over the death penalty issue, and I think you resolve that by having a firing squad as an alternative. That's just an issue, I think. So I think in answer to your question, why do it now? It's not my bill. I didn't file it. But I think there is a reason to look at it now, and that's the question. I think it's Oklahoma, if they strike down the death penalty on the fact there's no good injection process, I think it raises a question. We can't come in for a special session.
But I think you also raise another question here is, should we somehow dictate what we hear and what we don't hear at the legislature? I think if we start down that road, we lose a fundamental principle of American free speech. We have a process for 45 days, and any person of any mind can bring an issue to the legislature, and we have processes to deal with that. And if we don't like it, you vote no, or there's other processes to dispose of it.
But you often send things to interim for study because you want more information, you want more time to deal with them. And my question was more focused on the idea that you do have a lot of things taking your time out this session, big weighty issues, and would that crowd out something like this?
Well, it's a possibility, but again, it's hard for me to predict at this point.
Till we have a caucus decision, or we have some discussion on it over here, it'd be hard to determine what would happen to it. That obviously is a possibility, and I suppose anything's a possibility.
When would you take that up in caucus now that, I assume Tuesday because it's over here now?
Well, it's got a process to go through here.
Senator Okerlund?
I
think we'll see if we get a Senate sponsor. If we have a bill that's going to come before our body, once we get a Senate sponsor, then we can talk to them about when they want to bring it to caucus. We're obviously very busy in caucus. We've got lots of big issues, as you said, Lisa. But if the sponsor wants to talk about this in caucus, we have an opportunity to do it. And I can see us doing that in maybe a week or 10 days or something when we get kind of caught up on some of our other issues, if it does come before us.
What happens if you don't get a Senate sponsor?
It doesn't go anywhere.
Doesn't go anywhere.
Does that happen? Where a bill can pass?
I
one
think it's
body
rare,
or-
but it's happened before.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anyone know who might sponsor this?
Don't know.
You also have the chance that the Senate sponsor would agree to a bill in a certain way, and it gets amended in the House. I don't know if this happened or not, that then it comes over to the Senate sponsor says, I'm not gonna carry that. I don't want the amendment in it.
Yeah, those things are rare.
That you have.
But I think if we do go to caucus, we'll probably invite Senator Baucus to come down and present. Or at least not offer his opinion.
You'll unlock the door for me, President. Thank you.
Get the Baucus amendment.
Come on in. Any other questions?
Senator Osmond's property tax equality bill is expected to hit the floor next week, I believe. Essentially pooling all of the state portion of the property tax and equally distributing it throughout school districts through the state. His argument is that, some aren't bringing in as much as others and they all deserve the same opportunity. What are you guys' thoughts on that bill?
That's not quite what his bill does, as I understand it. My understanding is that we capped the property tax for several years. He would then release this cap, and by going up, it raises $78 million.
75 million.
Then he would take that money and he would give it to the districts whose property tax per student brought them up to an average. So it's kind of like like voted leeway and guaranteed amounts. So rather than take Park City, which probably has the richest property tax base based on the number of students, they would not lose any money. There'd be a slight raise there at this cap. So it's picking up what would have been the inflation factor had we not lowered the mill levy because of how we do the property tax. So it's not a true equalization. He's tried that before and never got anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why he's modified his bill.
Well,
So-
I mean, it isn't equalization, but it's a step towards some equalization because there's some major disparities between per pupil spending or per pupil resources in, say, a Nebo versus a Park City. And yet the effort on property taxes in the Nebo district is greater than the people in Summit County. And so this addresses it in a small way and helps the situation out. And I think it was mostly favorable in the Rev and Tax Committee. I was there, heard the bill. And this bill has been before us in a couple of different iterations over the last couple of years. And we always find an excuse not to do it. But it is really something that needs to be done. It's only on the one levy. It isn't a broad property tax or anything. It's only on the state portion of the property tax. So it's hard to predict what will happen to it on the Senate floor, but it was well received, at least in the Rev and Tax Committee.
And I like the concept. I mean, we have a sense of equalization inside of charter schools. And so what the charter schools are able to do is most of the property tax goes to capital buildings and those type of things, physical facilities. And the WPU goes to operations. But because charter schools get that all in a lump, they're able to defer or build less expensive buildings and use that money for salaries or for other things they feel better needed. But because we don't have equalization across the districts, it would be unfair for one district to have the capacity to use that for operations and not another. So I've always been a proponent for equalization. I think we ought to do that. I think it's a better system. The challenge has been when you equalize, there's some losers and some winners, and we've never been able to find a political process or a bill that would allow that to happen. This does part of it, and I like it.
Senator Baucus, you know,
This
comments?
is a soak the rich.
Soak
And
the
I
rich.
had a very tough time with this because I really believe we need more money in the system. And as I look at the numbers in the Salt Lake District, my whole district is in Salt Lake City, and they look like they'd be exporting some money. So then I had to decide, is a kid in West Jordan as important as a kid in Salt Lake? And I decided, yeah, they are. And so I heartily support Senator Osmond's bill. I think it's more money in the system, and we really desperately need that. So I hope it passes.
And this won't take any money from Salt Lake.
A little bit.
Brady said he gives it to
Yeah.
Can we ask about the Count My Vote letter that I think you all received from Governor Levitt and other supporters of the Count My Vote initiative, basically suggesting that if lawmakers go forward, it was directed just to the senators because that's where the bills are. If lawmakers go forward with these bills that will undo last year's compromise in SB 54, they've got no choice but to go back to the public and do what they want to do. What impact do you think that kind of tone will have, and what do you see happening with those bills?
So we've talked about this, I think, the other day, and we're happy to talk about it today. But in light of the letter, that's something that we hadn't seen before. So personally, I was part of that process last year, and I wouldn't be interested in passing myself anything that's contrary to SB 54. But those who voted against it last year, and I mentioned that a lot of things have changed in the legislature. We've got a new House leadership. You have a lot of new people that are elected. Again, it goes to the point that people can bring up bills, and we have a way to address those bills. But I feel like that it's a little bit, as far as the legislature as a whole, I think it highlights that you can't bind future legislatures. But for those who did vote for it, I think most of us feel like we had made a deal and we're going to live up to that deal.
Are those bills going to be voted on the floor? I understand they're on the board. Senator Jenkins' two bills.
Yeah, they'll be voted on the floor.
Do you think that letter, do you think that type of tone will work with lawmakers, or is that
It helps.
counterproductive?
It works with some and incites others. That's a reality. So I don't know, maybe that's neutral at the end.
I understand you met with Kirk Jowers personally today on that. What was part of that conversation, if you guys did indeed meet?
I just said, we did meet, and I just said, as far as I'm personally concerned, a deal is a deal is a deal, and I'm going to live up to that deal personally.
I think the president has it exactly right. I think we made a deal, and at least those of us that voted for it, and I don't know how we go back now, when that train, we stopped the train and all the energy and momentum with a deal, and now those of us that voted for it say, well, now that it's really difficult to start the train again, I think I agree 100%.
Let me give you another side. And I've said I'm not going to vote to change the deal, but I think there's a consideration you need to keep in mind. It's number one, it's great to sit down in a closed room and come up with an agreement and have a bill whipped through the legislature without really the debate processes and committee, and that it was an agreed to deal. We all knew one real problem with it was what happens at the primary election if there's 3 people on the ballot and one does not get 50%. The way I understand it, the one who got the highest, be it paid 40%, would be the candidate on the eventual thing. That's offensive, quite frankly, to me. I think whoever represents the party should have a majority. We knew that wasn't resolved. It was not part of it, but we knew there'd be further discussion. I'm told by people who are trying to work within the Republican Party, and I'm not talking just about James Evans, that really the logistics, that part of the process to comply with Count My Vote is there's going to have to be some bylaws changed within the Republican Party. And there's really not a lot of time, and there's really strong opposition by many delegates within the Republican Party. So you have a situation of the leadership of the Republican Party going to the caucus or going to the convention and saying, these are the changes we need to make, and the Republican Party delegates say, no, we're not going to make them. Which I think brings out the classic conflict of this whole thing, constitutional, is whether the state can dictate to a political party what its rules internally are going to be. That's what the whole lawsuit's about. And so you have that issue. What if they can't get it done? They go to the Republican convention, they can't change the rules, and they can't qualify. Does that mean that everyone who wants to run Republican now has to do the Count My Vote, and we don't have a bypass? And again, when you do that, who has the money to go out and do a Count My Vote petition when you could do, and I always used Lou's, I can never say her name now. Escamilla. Because she always said, I could have never been a candidate for the Senate had I had to go out and get the signatures. I got it by working hard and meeting the delegates and going through the caucus process. So, we can say here, we're not going to change it. And matter of fact, put it on the ballot, a constitutional amendment, as Senator Jenkins has said. I think really lets the people make a decision. That's not us changing it. That's the people making the choice. They can easily say, we love Count My Vote. We're not going to vote for that constitutional amendment. It's defeated. Then we really know what the people. They may say, after the confusion, everything's going on, it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. These are all issues floating around. And again, I share with what President Niederhauser said. I voted for the deal. I think a deal's a deal. But now you get questions, how do you really implement the deal? And by changing the implementation so that it really would work, it really will fit into the time frame, is that undoing the deal? Or letting the people decide if that's what they really want, is that undoing the deal? And I haven't read the letter, but I hope it's not a threatening one. I don't react well to threatening letters.
So with that in mind, then, I think it's Senate Bill 43 that would delay implementation. Do you think that's a good idea?
I need to know more about it. I'm not just wiping it out, because I don't think that undoes the deal. If there really is a legitimate problem. Now, I understand the Democratic Party says there's no problem, they can get it through. But there's a few more delegates you have to handle with the Republican Party.
So as you can see, we have differences of opinion, and
Yeah.
the bill will come up and it'll be voted on, and we'll see what happens. Any other questions? Do we have any from our viewers? All right, well, we hope everyone has a nice weekend, 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
We'll see you on Tuesday.
What?
Show up Monday, will you?
Or if you want to go mountain biking with me on Monday, I'll see you on
Let's go.
Monday.
He's just trying to get rid of me.
Yeah, I'll be skiing, so if there's any snow left.